The bounty hunter ship Obsidian Fawn cut through Earth's stratosphere, its sleek, black frame gliding undetected over the dim glow of city lights below. Inside, Captain Drax lounged in his command seat, feet up, arms crossed, staring at the planet with amused disdain. "This is the big mission?" Zyra scoffed, her cybernetic eye scanning data on Earth's crime syndicates. "Petty thieves, drug runners, idiots who can barely handle projectile weapons. This is what they're worried about." Torv, the largest of the trio, let out a rumbling laugh. "Back on Dargon 5, we took down an entire warlord clan with plasma axes and genetic enhancements. These Earth criminals wouldn't last 5 minutes there." Drax smirked. "Galactic enforcement wants to clean up the system. They think Earth's underworld is a problem. We'll take care of it in a week and be back home before my whiskey reserves run dry." Zyra's fingers danced over the holographic display, linking into Earth's primitive law enforcement networks. "Here we go. Organized crime family, big meeting happening right now in a warehouse downtown. We drop in, we show them real crime fighting, and we collect whatever bounties we can scavenge. Let's show these primitives how professionals do it," Drax said as he activated his stealth armor. The warehouse reeked of motor oil and stale cigars. Inside, a dozen men in suits sat around a long metal table, stacks of cash spread across its surface. A stocky man with a scar running down his cheek, Tony Morello, tapped his cigar against an ashtray. "Business is good," he said, exhaling smoke. "We move careful, we keep the cops in our pocket, we—" The roof exploded inward. 3 figures dropped from above, landing in a perfect triangular formation. The bounty hunters' weapons hummed with alien energy as they trained them on the dumbfounded criminals. "Greetings, gentlemen," Drax said, grinning. "You're all under arrest. Or dead. Your choice." One of the mobsters reached for his gun. Before his fingers touched the grip, a blue arc of energy from Zyra's gauntlet sent him crashing into a stack of crates. The others froze. Torv stepped forward, grabbing one man by the collar and lifting him effortlessly. "These are Earth's dangerous criminals? I've wrestled hyperbears with more backbone." Drax chuckled, watching Morello shake as he raised his hands. "I was hoping for at least a little challenge," he muttered. Morello swallowed hard. "You don't know what you're doing," he rasped. "You think you're tough? You haven't met him yet." Drax raised an eyebrow. "Him who?" Tony's eyes darted around the room as if speaking the name would summon something from the darkness itself. He leaned in slightly, voice barely above a whisper. "Jack." Zyra rolled her eyes. "And who the hell is Jack?" Morello's fingers clenched into a trembling fist. "Jack is the reason half the people in this business are either dead or hiding in a hole somewhere. Jack is the reason every deal has a plan B, in case he shows up. Jack is the reason." Drax waved a hand dismissively. Right. Every planet's got its urban legends. Some unstoppable killer, some boogeyman that lowlifes whisper about. The ones who do our job better than we do." He leaned in close, staring directly into Morello's terrified eyes. "You ever actually seen him?" Morello didn't answer. He just shook his head. Torv scoffed. "That's what I thought. Another bedtime story for weaklings." He turned to Zyra. "Let's wipe this place, turn em in, and move on. I'm already bored." Zyra cracked her knuckles. "Fine, but if we run into this Jack guy, I hope he puts up more of a fight than these clowns." In the shadows of the warehouse, unseen by the bounty hunters, a small security camera blinked once and shut itself off. Drax reclined in the captain's chair aboard the Obsidian Fawn, feet propped up as he scrolled through Earth's crime archives. The name Jack had turned up in whispers, scattered through various reports. Never any direct evidence. Never any solid profile. Just fear. "Nothing but rumors," Zyra muttered, pacing the control room. "Every mention of him is vague. No confirmed images. No real background. Either he's a myth, or he's the best ghost I've ever seen." Torv cracked his knuckles, leaning against the bulkhead. "We've taken down shapeshifters, telepaths, entire militias. One man isn't a problem." Drax smirked but kept scanning the database. Jack's name kept showing up in the same pattern. Major criminal organizations collapsing overnight, entire gangs wiped out, evidence rooms mysteriously emptied. The official reports never confirmed his involvement, but every surviving criminal had the same look in their eyes when asked about him. "We follow the bodies," Drax said. "Wherever this guy has been, there will be survivors too scared to talk. That's where we start." Zaira pulled up an interactive map. "There's a survivor. Miguel Vasquez. Last man standing from a cartel that got obliterated 2 months ago. He's been off the grid hiding. But I found him." Drax grinned. "Let's have a chat." The motel was the kind of place that smelled like mildew and regret. The flickering neon sign buzzed overhead as the bounty hunters strode through the cracked asphalt parking lot. "Room 14. Drax knocked once. "Miguel Vasquez. Open up. We have some questions." No response. Torv exhaled impatiently and kicked the door in with enough force to send it off its hinges. Inside, a man in his late 40s scrambled backward onto the bed, hands shaking. He reeked of cheap whiskey and fear. Miguel's bloodshot eyes darted between them. "No. No, I didn't do anything, please I didn't." Drax crouched beside him, offering a practiced, disarming smile. "Relax, Miguel. We're not here to hurt you. We just want to know about Jack." Miguel froze. His lips pressed together so tightly they went white. Torv cracked his knuckles. "You do want to talk, don't you?" Miguel swallowed hard. "Jack isn't a man," he whispered. "He's something else." Zaira tilted her head. "Oh, this should be good." Miguel rubbed his face with trembling hands. "We were in a warehouse, 20 men, fully armed. We had lookouts. We had cameras. We were ready. Then the power cut out. Pitch black. No sound. One by one, the men started disappearing." Drax frowned. "No gunfire?" Miguel shook his head. "No. Just screams. I ran. I didn't look back." Torv scoffed. "You're telling me one man, took out your entire operation without firing a shot?" Miguel's eyes were wide, haunted. "He doesn't need a gun." Drax studied him carefully. He wasn't lying. Zaira exhaled. "Guess we're doing this the hard way. Time to meet the myth." The industrial complex sat on the outskirts of the city, abandoned, the broken windows staring out like vacant eyes. If Jack was real, if he operated like the stories claimed, this was where he'd be. The bounty hunters moved in a disciplined formation. Zaira deployed drones, scanning every corridor. Torv adjusted his heavy blaster, keeping his back to the wall. Drax activated his HUD, enhancing his vision in the dim light. "Clear," Zaira whispered. "No life signs." They stepped deeper inside, their boots crunching over debris. Then the first drone blinked off the radar. Zaira stopped walking. "That's weird." She tapped her wrist console. "Drone 1, recalibrate." Nothing. A second drone vanished from the feed. Torv tightened his grip on his weapon. "Malfunction?" A third drone disappeared. Drax exhaled through his nose. "No. Not a malfunction." The air felt heavier. The silence became suffocating. Zaira's scanner flickered, picking up motion, but only for a split second before the signal vanished. Then they heard the sound. A slow, deliberate tap-tap-tap of boots on concrete. The sound of someone moving without hurry, without fear. Zaira raised her weapon. "Visual?" Drax turned his head slightly. "No," Torv growled. "Then who the hell is walking?" The tap-tap-tap stopped. A voice drifted from the darkness. Calm. Amused. "You shouldn't have come here." The bounty hunters, for the first time in their careers, hesitated. Zaira's pulse pounded in her ears as she spun toward the voice, weapon raised. Nothing but shadows. Drax exhaled slowly, gripping his rifle tighter. "You're Jack, aren't you?" Silence. Torv took a cautious step forward. "I don't care what you are. You're flesh and blood like the rest of them. Come out and fight." The only answer was a flickering light overhead, buzzing like a dying insect. Then movement, too fast, a blur at the edge of Zyra's vision. She whirled, but there was nothing there. Her scanner beeped. I'm picking up motion, but it's everywhere. The readings don't make sense. Torv fired a blast into the darkness. The shot illuminated the corridor for half a second, just enough time to see a shadow slip out of sight. Drax narrowed his eyes. He's playing with us. The voice came again, from behind them this time. No. You're playing in my house. The lights went out completely. Torv let out a snarl and activated his infrared vision. He saw movement, just for a moment, before something slammed into him with bone-crushing force. He roared in pain as he was yanked off his feet and into the blackness. Torv! Zyra shouted, switching her visor to thermal imaging. Nothing. Drax's breathing was measured, controlled, but Zyra could hear the tension in it. Regroup, he ordered. We need to. A metallic clatter echoed in the distance. A single bullet rolled toward them across the floor. Zyra swallowed hard. That's one of ours. Drax's jaw tightened. He took Torv's weapon. The voice came again, softer this time. You're not used to being hunted, are you? Zyra gritted her teeth. Enough of this. She activated a pulse wave from her gauntlet, sending an electromagnetic blast through the area. Every piece of tech in range flickered. For half a second, her visor picked up a figure standing right behind Drax. Move! She shouted. Drax spun just as something lashed out from the darkness. He fired, too late. A hand clamped around his wrist, twisting it violently. His weapon hit the ground. A knee smashed into his gut, sending him staggering backward. Zyra opened fire, but Jack was already gone. Drax coughed, holding his ribs. He's fast. That's an understatement, Zyra muttered. Another flicker of movement. Zyra swung her weapon around, but Jack was already gone. The air felt charged, as if the whole building was holding its breath. Then Jack spoke again. You came here hunting. That was a mistake. Zyra tightened her grip. We don't make mistakes. Jack chuckled. Then this must be a first for you. A hand shot from the darkness, wrapping around Zyra's wrist. Before she could react, she was yanked forward, slammed into the wall hard enough to make her visor glitch. Drax barely caught sight of Jack as he melted back into the shadows. Zyra groaned, rolling onto her knees. I hate this guy. Drax pulled her up. We need to fall back. No, Zyra growled. We take him down. Drax hesitated. That wasn't fear in his eyes, it was calculation. Jack was something else. Something wrong. And they weren't winning this fight. Zyra activated a plasma charge on her wrist. If we can't see him, we burn him out. She primed the explosive, a miniature sun ready to engulf everything in the room. But before she could press the trigger, something whispered in her ear. Too slow. Her world went black. Drax staggered back, looking at where Zyra had been standing just a second ago. Nothing remained but her weapon, neatly placed on the floor. A cold realization settled over him. They weren't the hunters anymore. Jack wasn't a myth. Jack wasn't a man. Jack was something else. Drax turned and ran. Drax sprinted through the abandoned complex, his breath ragged, his mind racing. Zyra was gone. Torv was gone. This was not how the hunt was supposed to go. He had taken down warlords, assassins, entire fleets of cybernetic mercenaries. This was one man. One man who had just turned his team into ghosts. He activated his communicator. Zyra, Torv, respond. Static. His HUD flickered, the map distorting. His weapons were fully charged, his armor at peak capacity, and yet he had never felt more vulnerable. Then Jack's voice cut through the silence. Calm. Collected. Running now, Captain? Where's all that confidence? Drax grit his teeth. You're just a man. You bleed like the rest. A soft chuckle. Then why are you afraid? Drax didn't answer. He just kept moving, mapping out the fastest route back to his ship. He needed a plan, needed distance. He was no coward, but he knew when to regroup. Ahead, an exit loomed, an old metal door leading outside. He sprinted for it. 10 feet. 5. It slammed shut. He skidded to a halt, weapon raised. Enough of this! He fired a charged plasma blast, the kind that could punch through starship hulls. The door melted into slag. He turned. Jack was standing behind him. No noise. No movement. Just there. Drax reacted instantly, raising his rifle. But Jack was faster. A sharp strike to the wrist sent his weapon flying. A second hit to his ribs knocked the air from his lungs. Drax swung, but Jack ducked, twisting his arm behind his back in a painful lock. "You fight well," Jack murmured. "Better than your friends." Drax growled, trying to break free. "What are you?" Jack leaned in, his voice barely above a whisper. "A problem." Drax roared and used his full strength, breaking Jack's grip and sending a brutal kick toward his head. Jack tilted his head just enough to let the strike pass harmlessly by. Drax barely had time to process the speed before Jack countered with a strike of his own. The world spun as Drax hit the ground. For the first time in his life, he was losing. He rolled to his feet, reaching for his backup weapon. Jack didn't stop him. Drax fired. A clean shot. Point blank. Jack sidestepped. Drax fired again. And again. And again. Each shot perfect, precise, yet Jack was never where he needed to be. Drax's chest heaved. He'd fought telepaths, shapeshifters, species that moved faster than the eye could track. But this was different. Jack wasn't just fast. Jack knew. Jack wasn't reacting. He was predicting. Drax took a slow step back, gripping his last grenade. "You're good." Jack tilted his head. "I'm better." Drax didn't hesitate. He threw the grenade, activating the containment field midair, an implosion device meant to collapse everything in a 10-foot radius. The explosion rocked the building. Dust filled the air. Drax didn't wait to confirm. He turned and ran. He reached the exit, sprinting through the wreckage. His ship was only a mile out. If he could just... Something moved. A shadow detached from the smoke. Drax's breath caught. Jack stepped forward untouched. Drax whispered, "That's not possible." Jack just smiled. Drax didn't wait. He ran. For the first time in his life, he ran. Drax's legs burned as he sprinted, his boots pounding against the cracked asphalt of the industrial complex. The obsidian farm was in sight, just a few hundred yards, but it might as well have been 1,000. Every step felt heavier, the weight of his failure weighing down on him. Zyra was gone. Torv was gone. The impossible had happened. The ship's hatch was open. He was almost there. Then the ground trembled. Drax stopped, his heart racing. A distant, low hum reached his ears, vibrating through the ground. It was too steady to be an earthquake. It was mechanical. He turned, weapon ready. The hum grew louder. Then a flash of movement, too quick for his eyes to follow. The ground in front of him exploded, sending debris flying as a figure appeared in the cloud of dust. "Jack. You never learn, do you?" Jack's voice rang out, calm and cold. Drax tightened his grip on his blaster. "Why are you doing this?" Jack stepped forward, each movement unnervingly fluid. "You came to my world. You came hunting. You made the mistake of underestimating me." He tilted his head. "And now you'll pay." Drax aimed his weapon, pulling the trigger. A burst of concentrated energy shot out. But Jack was already gone, moving faster than Drax could react. He felt a sharp pain as something struck the back of his leg. He fell forward, barely managing to catch himself on the ground. Jack stood behind him, the air around him still and silent. "You've heard of the Boogeyman, haven't you? The one who hunts the hunters. You wanted to meet him. Congratulations." Drax's mind raced. He was cornered. Outclassed. Jack had been right. He wasn't prepared for this. Then, like a flash of insight, Drax realized something. Jack had never shown his face. He wasn't invincible. He wasn't supernatural. He was just hiding. Drax staggered to his feet, adrenaline surging through him. "If I'm going to die," he muttered, "I'm taking you with me." He threw his last grenade, detonating it directly at Jack's position. The explosion lit up the night. For a moment, there was nothing but smoke and silence. Then Jack emerged, unscathed, stepping out of the wreckage. Drax was panting, vision blurry. His body was screaming at him to stop. "You are a ghost," he spat. Jack smiled, his face still hidden in shadow. "Ghosts don't bleed, Captain." A low growl escaped Drax's throat. He couldn't do it. He couldn't beat him. Jack was too fast, too unpredictable. He had no chance. But there was one last thing he could do. He turned, bolting toward the obsidian Fong, his last hope for escape. Behind him, Jack's voice echoed, quieter now, almost amused. "You can run. But you can never hide." Drax reached the ship, leaping through the hatch and sealing it behind him. His hands were shaking as he powered up the engines. The ship shot into the sky, breaking through the atmosphere with a sharp jolt. Drax slumped into the captain's chair, his heart still pounding. He was alive. He was leaving. But as the obsidian Fong tore through the stars, the cold realization sank in. This wasn't over. Jack would find him. Jack would always find him.